Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
You know how this works.
Uh-huh.
We take fascinating source material and we extract the most valuable insights from it.
Right.
And this time we're doing a deep dive that was actually a special request from one of our listeners.
Okay.
We're going to be diving into the teachings of Acharya Prashant, pronounced properly as Acharya, I-S-T, Karya, on karma.
Very cool.
You might think you know karma.
Mm-hmm.
But Acharya Prashant offers some mind-bending twists on this concept that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. And hey, if you're enjoying these deep dives, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of our future episodes.
Okay, so
Yeah.
karma, it often gets simplified into this cosmic reward and punishment system,
Right.
which can be really limiting.
Yeah, it's like this cosmic scorecard where you're like constantly looking over your shoulder, worried about whether you know your past actions are going to come back to haunt you.
Yeah, and Acharya Prashant's take on karma is something else entirely.
Yeah, he really pushes back against those really popular conceptions of karma.
He does, and what's interesting is that he's not just coming up with these ideas.
Right.
He's drawing on this ancient wisdom, specifically Vedanta philosophy, but he makes it super relevant to our lives today.
So before we get into Acharya Prashant's perspective, let's rewind a little bit and talk about those popular ideas about karma
Okay.
that he's challenging.
Yeah.
What are some of the common beliefs people have about karma?
Well, we mentioned that cosmic scorecard.
Right.
Do good things happen. Do bad things, get ready for the consequences.
Yeah.
And that can create this feeling that your present is predetermined based on your past actions.
Totally.
And some people feel like that's really disempowering, like they have no control over their lives.
It's almost like you're fated to repeat those same patterns over and over again.
Oh.
Destined to suffer for your past mistakes. And that kind of takes away the whole idea of free will.
Right.
And the possibility of change.
Exactly. And Acharya Prashant argues that this kind of thinking totally misses the point of what karma really is.
Okay.
He says that unlike animals, humans have a choice in how they act.
All right.
We're not just driven by instinct or blind reaction.
So we're not just puppets on a string, destined to play out some predetermined script.
Yeah.
We actually have the power to choose a different path.
That's right. Okay. And that's where Acharya Prashant's idea of liberation comes in.
Okay.
He says that true karma is about making conscious choices that are in the pursuit of liberation, which is basically freedom from suffering. It's not about blindly following some predetermined script based on what you did in the past, but rather making choices in the present that lead to genuine inner growth.
Okay, so that's a pretty radical shift in perspective. So if true karma is about liberation, about making conscious choices in the present, how does Acharya Prashant explain those situations where bad things happen to good people?
Right, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
He challenges us to look beyond that surface level of, judging an action as good or bad and to consider the deeper motivations behind our choices.
Okay.
He uses this example of a young girl who was abducted by a king.
Oh, wow.
And, at first glance, it seems like the worst possible karma, right?
Like, what did she do to deserve that?
Right. But Acharya Prashant points out that even though this girl is in this horrible situation, she never wavers from her commitment to what she knows is the right thing to do. And through her actions. Her unwavering integrity. She ends up influencing the king in this really profound way.
Wow.
It's this example of how even when you're facing something really difficult, aligning with what feels true and right can have this ripple effect.
So even though she's experiencing, tremendous suffering, her inner state, her commitment to what she believes in is actually what ends up shifting the entire dynamic.
Yes.
That's powerful.
It is. And it gets to another crucial point that Acharya Prashant makes. True liberation is not about seeking comfort or avoiding difficult situations. It's about acting in alignment with your understanding, regardless of what happens on the outside.
I'm starting to see how Acharya Prashant's view of karma really flips the script on those popular notions of, reward and punishment.
Right.
So let's just dive a little deeper into what he means by acting in alignment with your understanding.
Okay.
He talks a lot about this idea of desireless action.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
Desireless action can sound kind of misleading.
And
it doesn't mean sitting on a mountaintop doing nothing.
Right.
It's about finding joy and fulfillment in the process of taking action.
Okay.
Rather than being solely fixated on achieving a specific outcome.
So it's not about becoming passive.
Right.
Or indifferent. It's about shifting our focus from the destination to the journey itself.
Exactly. It's about being fully present. In each moment, engaging in your actions wholeheartedly without that constant chatter about what you're going to get.
So it's like being a kid again.
Yeah.
Totally observed and playing a game without worrying about winning or losing.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it ties back to Acharya Prashant's idea of liberation.
Okay.
Because true liberation isn't about achieving some goal or outcome. It's about finding that sense of peace and fulfillment in the present moment, regardless of what's happening.
Regardless of external circumstances.
Okay.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
Good.
But this all still feels a bit abstract.
Okay.
What would this desireless action look like in real life?
Okay, so let's say you're working on a project at work. From the perspective of desireless action, it wouldn't be about, getting the promotion or the recognition that comes from, successfully completing the project.
Right.
It would be about finding joy in the process of creating something.
Okay.
Collaborating with others and, using your skills to contribute something meaningful.
So it's about shifting our focus from what am I going to get out of this to how can I fully engage in this experience and contribute something valuable.
Precisely. And, there are a couple of quotes from Acharya Prashant that I thought were really relevant.
Okay.
One that really stopped me in my tracks was, if all seems to be going comfortably, chances are all is going wrong.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
What do you think he means by that?
I think it's a challenge to our assumptions about what makes a good life.
Okay.
Or a successful life. Because true growth comes from those moments of discomfort.
Okay.
The challenges that force us to confront our limitations and step outside of our comfort zones.
If we're always seeking comfort and ease,
right?
Always playing it safe, we might be missing out on those opportunities for real transformation and growth.
It's like that saying, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor.
Totally.
We need those challenges to push us to evolve and become more than we are.
It ties back into this concept of karma as a path towards liberation.
It does.
Because true liberation isn't about achieving some static state of bliss.
Right.
It's about continuously evolving, expanding your consciousness, and moving towards greater understanding.
Yeah.
And that process often involves discomfort and pain.
Yes.
Okay. So it's not about seeking a life that's free from challenges, but rather about approaching those challenges with a different mindset, with a willingness to learn and grow from them.
You got it. Okay.
It's about recognizing that those challenges, those moments of friction, are opportunities to really step into your truth and to align your actions with your deepest values.
That's a powerful reframing of those difficult experiences that we all inevitably face in life.
It is.
Now, there was another quote from Acharya Prashant I wanted to ask you about.
He says, survival of the fittest applies to animals. Their survival means physical survival. In your case, if there is physical survival without peace to the consciousness, then it is worse than not surviving.
Whoa.
That's intense.
Yeah, and I think what he's saying is that as humans, we're not just driven by this need to survive physically. We have this capacity for consciousness, self-awareness, for connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And if we're only focusing on surviving physically, on achieving external markers of success, wealth status, power, but neglecting our inner world, then we're not truly living a fulfilling life.
So it's about finding that balance between those external achievements and our internal state of being.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that true success, true fulfillment doesn't come from accumulating more. It comes from aligning your actions with a purpose that's deeper.
Right.
A purpose that transcends the limited desires of the ego.
And that purpose often involves cultivating inner peace connection. A sense of meaning and contribution that goes beyond those just material pursuits. I'm starting to see how Acharya Prashant's perspective on karma really challenges us to rethink our priorities, to redefine what it means to really thrive as human beings.
Yeah.
Well, this is all incredibly fascinating, but I think we need to give our listeners a moment to digest all of this. We'll be back in a jiffy to delve deeper into Acharya Prashant's perspective and explore some real-world examples of how we can put these principles into practice.
Sounds good. You know what really strikes me about Acharya Prashant is that he's not just, some guru on a mountaintop talking about these philosophical concepts.
Right.
He's really interested in how these ideas can help us navigate, the messiness of everyday life.
He's taken this ancient wisdom and he's like, hey, this stuff isn't just for scholars and monks.
Right.
It can actually help you deal with that annoying coworker or make a tough decision about your career or just feel, a little more at peace.
Yeah.
Amidst the chaos of modern life.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I find so exciting about his perspective on karma is that it's incredibly empowering.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What are some of the pros of seeing karma through this lens of liberation and conscious action?
Well, it takes the focus off of this idea that the universe is keeping score.
Right.
Waiting to punish you for past mistakes.
Okay.
And instead, you realize that you have agency. You can make choices that shape your inner state.
Okay.
And ultimately, your experience of life.
So it's a shift from feeling like a victim of circumstance to becoming the author of your own story.
Exactly. It's liberating because you're not constantly looking over your shoulder, worried about what might be coming your way.
Right.
Instead, you're focused on making choices in the present moment.
Yeah.
That align with your values, your understanding, and your aspirations.
Yeah, and that kind of inner freedom, that sense of agency, can lead to a much more joyful and authentic experience of life.
Absolutely. When you're acting from a place of alignment, there's this deep sense of peace and purpose.
That comes up. It's like you're tapping into this source of inner strength that can carry you through anything.
Okay. I'm totally on board with all the positive aspects.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there are also some challenges that come with embracing Acharya Prashant's perspective on karma.
There are, as with any path of, self-discovery.
Right.
It requires honesty, self-reflection.
Yeah.
Which can be uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's not just about adopting a new set of beliefs. It's about doing the inner work, the self-inquiry, and being willing to face, those aspects of ourselves that we might not always be proud of.
That's right. It's about letting go of the old stories that we tell ourselves,
Yeah.
those beliefs that, we think are keeping us safe, but really they're keeping us stuck.
Yeah. And that can be really tough.
It is.
We humans are creatures of habit. It's so hard to let go of those familiar patterns, even when we know they're not serving us.
And it takes courage.
Yeah.
The courage to question those beliefs, to step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And embrace the unknown.
And I think one of the things that I struggle with personally is that sometimes what feels true and aligned for me might clash with societal expectations.
Right.
Or the expectations of those around me. And that can create a lot of inner conflict.
I hear you. It's a challenge we all face because when you start to live in a way that's really authentic, it challenges the status quo.
Totally.
It disrupts those comfortable patterns that people might be invested in.
Yeah.
And that can lead to pushback.
Yeah.
Or even conflict.
So it's not always about fitting in or pleasing others.
Right.
It's about honoring your own inner compass. Even when it leads you down a path that might seem unconventional or challenging.
Exactly. It requires self-trust
and
conviction, a willingness to stand in your truth, even when it's not popular or easy.
Which can be scary.
Very scary.
Especially if you're someone who's used to, seeking approval or validation from others.
Yeah. I bet some of our listeners are feeling overwhelmed right now.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the intellectual understanding of all this.
Right.
But then the question is, how do I actually start to apply this?
Right. Where do I even begin?
Right. And it's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination.
Totally.
You don't have to change your whole life overnight.
Okay.
Start by focusing on the areas where you feel the most dissonance, the most misalignment between how you're living and what feels true to you.
Okay, so someone's listening right now and thinking, okay, I'm ready to give this whole Acharya Prashant thing a try.
Okay.
What would be like a good first step?
I would say start by noticing.
Okay.
Pay attention to those moments when you're feeling stressed, anxious, or unfulfilled.
Okay.
Ask yourself what's causing this feeling. What beliefs or patterns might be contributing to this.
So it's about cultivating that self-awareness.
Yeah.
That ability to observe our thoughts, feelings, and actions without judgment.
Exactly. And then as you become more aware of those patterns, those moments of misalignment, you can start experimenting with making different choices.
Okay.
Choices that feel more aligned with your values, with your understanding, with your aspirations.
So instead of trying to force this massive change, just start by noticing those moments of dissonance.
Yeah.
And then gently nudging yourself in a different direction.
Precisely. And remember, it's about progress,
Yeah.
not perfection.
Totally.
You're going to mess up. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Of course.
It's all part of the process. The key is to keep coming back to that intention, that desire to live in a way that feels authentic and aligned.
Yeah. You know, in the source material, Acharya Prashant talks about remembering the doer and remembering the deed.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means and how that relates to this idea of like taking ownership of our actions?
Sure. It's a call to be more mindful of the connection between our actions and their consequences.
Okay.
Not in a way that makes you feel guilty or ashamed, but in a way that helps you understand the patterns and motivations that are driving your behavior.
Okay.
You know, it's recognizing that we're active participants in creating our reality.
Okay.
And that our choices have consequences, both for ourselves and for others.
So it's about cultivating that sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
Not just for our actions, but also for the thoughts and the beliefs and the intentions that are shaping those actions.
Because, you know, our thoughts and beliefs create our reality. If we're constantly operating from a place of fear, scarcity, or judgment, we're going to create experiences that reflect that.
Right.
But if we can shift those beliefs, if we can start operating from a place of love, abundance, and compassion, our reality will begin to shift.
Okay, now this is where things start to get a little mind-bending.
Okay.
Acharya Prashant also talks about the idea of doership.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, this one's a bit of a head-scratcher for me.
Okay.
Can you shed some light on what he means by that?
Of course it's a fascinating concept because it challenges our assumptions about who's really in control.
Okay.
You know, he suggests that we often have this false sense of doership, believing that we're the ones making things happen. But in reality, there are all these factors that influence our choices and behaviors. You know, our genetics, our upbringing, our culture, our past experiences, even the thoughts and emotions of those around us.
So you're saying we're not as in control as we might think.
It's humbling, right?
Yeah.
And it's also really liberating.
Okay.
Because it frees us from that burden of feeling responsible for everything that happens in our lives.
Now, instead of clinging to this idea that we're like the masters of our destiny, we can cultivate a sense of surrender.
Yeah.
A trust in the unfolding of life, even when things don't go according to plan.
Exactly. And surrender isn't about giving up. Becoming passive.
Okay.
It's about aligning ourselves with that flow of life, that wisdom that's bigger than our minds can comprehend.
Okay.
It's trusting that we're being guided, even when we can't see the big picture.
That ties back to the idea of liberation.
It does.
Because true liberation is about freedom from the suffering that arises from clinging to that false sense of doership and attachment to outcomes.
True freedom comes from recognizing that happiness and fulfillment don't come from external circumstances. They come from that inner alignment, that sense of peace and purpose. That comes from living in accordance with your truth.
Now, Acharya Prashant uses this really interesting analogy of the XY plane to explain this idea of liberation. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. It's a great way to illustrate the difference between, you know, operating from that limited ego-driven perspective and a more liberated perspective. So he says the XY plane represents the material world where we're chasing after things, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain. You know, it's that world of comparison and competition.
It's like that hamster wheel.
Yes.
Of desire and dissatisfaction that we all get caught up in.
Exactly. And that's a very two-dimensional way of living. But he suggests that there's another dimension, the Z-axis, that represents liberation, you know, transcending those desires and finding peace and fulfillment. That's not dependent on external things.
Well, it's like we're moving from that flat two-dimensional existence to this more expansive three-dimensional reality where we're not bound by those same limitations.
And in this higher dimension, we're not just chasing after things. We're tapping into a deeper source of joy and fulfillment that comes from connecting with our true nature.
That's a beautiful image.
It is.
But how do we actually access that Z-axis, that realm of liberation in our everyday lives?
It starts with recognizing those moments when we're operating from that limited XY perspective. You know, those moments when we're feeling stressed, anxious, or driven by fear.
So becoming aware of those patterns, those moments when we're caught up in that hamster wheel.
Yes. And then in those moments, making a choice.
To
shift our focus.
To
step back, take a breath, and connect with that peace and presence.
So it's about cultivating those practices that help us to tap into that Z-axis.
Yes.
Practices like meditation, spending time in nature, connecting with loved ones, or just taking a few moments to appreciate the beauty of the present moment.
Exactly. It's about those conscious choices that help us transcend the limitations of the ego and connect with that deeper source of wisdom, peace, and joy.
Okay, this is all making a lot of sense.
Good.
But I'm sure some listeners are still a bit skeptical.
Sure.
They might be thinking, okay, all this talk about liberation and desireless action sounds great.
Right.
But is it really possible to live this way?
Yeah.
In the real world?
In a real world with all of its, challenges and complexities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What would you say to those skeptics?
I would say that Acharya Prashant doesn't present these teachings as some kind of magical solution or a way to escape from reality. He acknowledges that life is going to be messy, that there will be challenges and suffering, and we're not going to get it right all the time.
So it's not about creating some perfect blissful existence where we're floating above all the difficulties of life.
No, it's about learning to navigate those difficulties from a different place, from a place of greater awareness, wisdom, and compassion. It's about recognizing that challenges are opportunities for growth. For transformation, for becoming more aligned with who we really are.
One of the things I appreciate about Acharya Prashant is that he doesn't shy away from addressing those challenges,
Right.
He uses humor and real-world examples to make these concepts, more relatable and accessible.
He does remember that story about the bull and the vegetables.
I don't, actually.
Oh, it's hilarious, but it makes this really profound point about how we humans often dress up our basic animalistic drives in fancy language and justifications.
Okay, remind me, what's the story about?
So he's talking about how we complicate things unnecessarily. We create all this mental gymnastics to justify our actions. And he uses this example of a bull that's trying to get to this patch of vegetables. And the bull, being a bull, just wants to eat. There's no complex thought process there. It's just pure instinct. But then he compares that to us. How we approach things. Like, let's say a corporate takeover. We dress it up in all this jargon and reasoning. But at the end of the day, it's often just, a more sophisticated version of that same drive.
So we're essentially bulls in suits.
Exactly. And Acharya Prashant is inviting us to be more honest with ourselves about our motivations.
To see through those justifications that our egos create.
That's a great reminder to not take ourselves too seriously. And to be willing to question those stories that we tell ourselves to make sense of our actions. Now, Acharya Prashant also talks a lot about the importance of right action. What does he mean by that? And how do we know if we're acting in a way that's truly, aligned with our liberation?
That's a great question. And it's something that he encourages us to explore through self-reflection. And a genuine understanding of our motivations. And he says that right action isn't about following a set of rules or dogmas. It's about aligning our actions with our inner truth, with our understanding, and those values that feel most aligned with our aspirations.
It's less about checking boxes and more about tuning into that inner compass. That sense of what feels authentic and aligned for us.
That's it. And he emphasizes that sometimes right action might feel counterintuitive.
Or even uncomfortable. It might require you to step outside of your comfort zone, to challenge the status quo, or make choices that other people don't understand.
Because what's right for one person might not be right for another.
Exactly. It's about honoring your unique path. And making those choices that feel authentic to you.
I think I'm starting to get a handle on this whole right action thing.
Good.
But I also know that I'm not always going to get it right. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to stumble, and I'm probably going to beat myself up about it sometimes. What would Acharya Prashant say about that?
I think he would remind us that we're human. We're all on this journey. And making mistakes is part of that. He would encourage us to be kind to ourselves, to forgive ourselves for those missteps, and to see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Instead of reasons to punish ourselves.
Exactly.
It's easy to get caught up in that self-criticism, that inner voice that tells us we're not good enough.
That we're failing somehow.
Exactly.
And Acharya Prashant reminds us that liberation includes freedom from that harsh inner critic, that voice that keeps us small.
Yeah.
And prevents us from embracing our full potential.
He also talks about this distinction between the energy of a common man and the energy of a wise man.
Right.
Can you explain that a little further?
Sure. He's essentially saying that the energy of a common man is often scattered, chaotic, driven by those base desires for pleasure, security, and recognition.
Right.
It's like we're leaking energy in all directions, chasing after things that don't bring us lasting fulfillment.
And they can leave us feeling exhausted, frustrated, and just overwhelmed.
Totally. Like we're running on a treadmill.
Yeah.
But the energy of a wise man is more focused, purposeful, and directed towards a higher aim.
Okay.
It's like we're harnessing that energy, channeling it in a way that supports our growth and contributes to something larger than ourselves.
So it's about aligning our actions with our values.
Yes.
And using our energy to create something meaningful.
Exactly.
To make a positive impact on the world.
Right. And this shift in energy doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It requires practice, self-reflection, meditation, connecting with our values, making those choices that align us with our truth.
Right.
As we cultivate inner alignment.
Okay.
Our energy naturally becomes more focused.
Okay.
More directed towards those actions that matter.
I love that image of harnessing our energy and using it to create something meaningful in the world.
Yeah.
Now, Acharya Prashant also emphasizes the importance of questioning our beliefs.
Yes.
Our assumptions. Can you talk about why that's so important?
He's constantly encouraging us to examine those beliefs that are shaping our perceptions.
Right.
Even if we're not consciously aware of them.
It's like those beliefs are operating in the background, like software programs running on our mental computer.
Exactly. And often, we've inherited these beliefs from our families or culture.
Right.
We just accept them without questioning them.
So it's about cultivating critical thinking, that willingness to challenge the status quo and explore beliefs that might be limiting us.
And it's not about, throwing out all your beliefs or becoming cynical or distrustful.
Yeah.
It's about approaching your beliefs with curiosity. Asking yourself, is this belief serving me?
Yeah.
Is it aligned with my experience?
Right.
Does it support my growth and well-being?
And if the answer is no,
then you have the power to choose a different one.
That's such a powerful reminder that we're not stuck with those limiting beliefs.
They're not.
We have the power to choose beliefs that support us, empower us, and help us create a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Yes.
Now, Acharya Prashant also talks about understanding our real duty. How does that differ from those societal expectations or obligations that we often feel pressured to fulfill?
So he's saying that our real duty isn't about fulfilling those external expectations or adhering to these rigid rules and dogmas. It's about aligning our actions with our deepest purpose and our desire for liberation. He's challenging us to look beyond those conventional notions of duty that might be based on fear obligation or a desire to please others and to ask ourselves, is this really serving me? Or am I just trying to avoid discomfort or disapproval?
It's like we're being asked to redefine what duty means for us.
Yeah.
To connect with that deeper sense of purpose that resides within us, rather than blindly following the dictates of society.
Exactly. And that takes courage.
Yeah.
Because sometimes our real duty might require us to break free from those expectations. And choose a path that's unconventional or even risky.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most challenging aspects of Acharya Prashant's teachings.
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about, aligning with our truth. But when that truth clashes with those beliefs and expectations that have been instilled in us from a young age, it can be really scary to step outside of those norms.
But it's also incredibly liberating.
Yeah.
Because when you finally find that courage to break free, you experience a level of joy and freedom and fulfillment that's just not possible when you're trying to fit in.
I'm reminded of a quote from Acharya Prashant, where he talks about cultivating a sense of disregard towards the opinions of others.
Right.
Which might sound controversial to some people.
It does.
But I think it's a really important point. Can you elaborate on what he means by that?
Absolutely. And it's important to understand that he's not advocating for being rude or disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's not about dismissing the perspectives of others or refusing to listen.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that we're the ones who have to live with our choices. You can't let the fear of judgment or disapproval control your actions. You have to trust your inner knowing and make choices that feel authentic to you.
Even if they're not popular with everyone.
Exactly.
So it's about finding that balance between being open to feedback, but also being discerning about whose opinions we allow to influence us.
Right. Surround yourself with people who support you, who challenge you, but be able to set boundaries with those whose opinions might be rooted in fear or judgment.
One of the things I really appreciate about Acharya Prashant's teachings is that he doesn't sugarcoat things.
Yeah.
He's very direct.
He is.
And sometimes even a bit provocative in his way of challenging those beliefs and patterns that might be holding us back.
He's not afraid to call us out on our own BS.
Right.
He
sees right through it.
He does.
Those elaborate justifications that we create to avoid taking responsibility.
Then sometimes we need that directness to shake things up, to get us moving in the right direction.
He also talks about this idea of surrendering our right to not choose the right.
Yes.
What does that even mean?
I know it sounds like a Zen koan.
It does.
But it makes sense when you think about it.
Okay.
He's saying that once we connect with our inner knowing, once we've recognized what's truly right for us, we have to let go of that resistance, that doubt that tries to pull us back, to those old patterns.
To keep us playing small.
Yeah, it's like we get in our own way, we create these obstacles.
Totally.
Even when we know what to do.
Exactly. And that's where the surrender comes in.
Yes.
And it's not about giving up our free will or becoming passive.
No.
It's about consciously choosing to align our actions with our highest understanding.
Yes.
Even when it feels challenging or uncomfortable.
Yeah, when it's hard.
It's about trusting that we're being guided.
Yes.
That there's this higher intelligence at work.
Right.
And that by surrendering to that guidance, we're opening ourselves up to a level of wisdom and flow that's beyond anything our little egos can comprehend.
Exactly.
I'm starting to understand why so many people find Acharya Prashant's teachings so appealing.
Yeah.
He's not offering some fluffy, feel-good spirituality.
Right.
He's presenting a path that's both challenging and incredibly liberating.
He is, and what resonates with people, I think, is his authenticity. He's not trying to sell you anything.
Right.
He's just sharing his wisdom and his experience.
Yeah.
And inviting you to join him.
Okay, well, I'm feeling inspired.
Good.
And ready to delve deeper into Acharya Prashant's teachings.
Yeah.
But I think it's time for another short break.
Okay.
To let our listeners process all of this.
Sounds good.
We'll be back soon to explore some more of Acharya Prashant's wisdom and discuss how we can start putting these principles into practice in our own lives. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. One of the things that keeps coming up for me is this idea of dispassion that Acharya Prashant talks about. And I think a lot of people hear that word and they think it means, becoming cold or emotionless.
Like a robot.
Yeah, like some kind of robot.
Yeah.
But I'm sensing that's not what he's getting at.
You're right. Dispassion is not about suppressing your emotions or becoming indifferent. It's about recognizing that true happiness and fulfillment don't come from clinging to things or outcomes. It's about finding that peace and contentment.
Okay.
That's not dependent on things going a certain way.
So it's about loosening our grip on, those things that we think will make us happy or secure.
Yeah.
Those external achievements, possessions, or even relationships. And recognizing that, true fulfillment comes from something deeper.
Yeah.
Something within ourselves.
That's it. And that detachment doesn't mean that we stop caring
Right.
or stop engaging with the world.
Right.
It just means that we're not letting our happiness or our self-worth depend on those things.
Okay.
We can still enjoy them, but we're not clinging to them. And we can let them go without feeling devastated.
It's like we're learning to appreciate the beauty of a flower.
Yeah.
Without, feeling the need to pluck it.
Right.
And possess it.
Yeah.
We can appreciate its beauty and its fragrance without needing to own it.
That's a beautiful analogy.
And that detachment, that dispassion, frees us to experience life more fully.
Yes.
To appreciate the present moment.
Yeah.
Without constantly worrying about the future or dwelling on the past.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, how do we cultivate dispassion?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
It sounds like a tall order, especially, with all the messages we're constantly bombarded with.
Right.
About, what we should buy, what we should achieve, what we should look like to be happy.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It takes practice. And it starts with self-awareness, noticing those moments when we're clinging, when we're feeling a patch or averse.
Okay.
And then gently reminding ourselves that true happiness doesn't come from those external things.
So it's about shifting our focus from the external to the internal.
Yes.
From seeking happiness in the world around us to cultivating it within.
Exactly. And that takes time.
Right.
It's a process of letting go and learning to find that fulfillment in a deeper connection.
You know, in the source material, Acharya Prashant talks about this distinction between happiness and joy.
Yes.
And I'm curious to hear your take on that.
He makes a really interesting point that happiness is fleeting, dependent on external circumstances or achievements. You know, it's that feeling when things are going your way, when you get what you want, but those feelings are often short-lived, and we just end up chasing the next thing.
It's like that sugar rush that we get from like eating a candy bar.
Yeah.
You know, it feels good in the moment, but it doesn't last.
And then you just want more.
Yeah. We're soon craving another fix.
That's a great analogy. And Acharya Prashant contrasts happiness with joy, which is a more stable, enduring state. That's independent of what's happening on the outside.
So joy is more like a deep wellspring that we can tap into at any time, regardless of what's happening in our external world.
Exactly. It's not about avoiding pain or discomfort. It's about having that inner resilience that allows us to deal with those things with grace.
I love that image of a deep wellspring of joy that we can access at any time.
It's empowering.
Yeah, it's so much more empowering than chasing after those fleeting moments of happiness.
It is. And it's something that we cultivate through self-awareness, meditation, and connecting with our values.
So as we deepen that connection with our true selves, that sense of joy naturally arises.
It does. You know, Acharya Prashant often uses those terms liberation, freedom, and moksha almost interchangeably.
Right.
And he's emphasizing that they're not some far-off state. They're about this process of freeing ourselves from limitations and suffering that come from those desires and attachments that we've been talking about.
So it's about breaking free from those mental chains that keep us bound to that, you know, cycle of seeking and striving and finding that place of peace that's not dependent on external circumstances.
Exactly. And it's a process, not a destination.
Right.
We're constantly evolving, shedding those layers and moving towards greater freedom.
You know, one of the things that really struck me in the source material was Acharya Prashant's discussion of self-neglect.
Okay.
Can you explain what he means by that? It seems kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Especially in a culture that's so focused on self-care.
He makes a distinction between what we think of as self-care and true self-care. He says that a lot of what we call self-care is actually self-indulgence. You know, where we're catering to our desires and avoiding things that feel uncomfortable.
So it's like we're pampering the ego.
All right.
Instead of like tending to the deeper needs.
Exactly. It's like giving a spoiled child everything they want instead of setting healthy boundaries.
And teaching them those valuable life lessons.
Right. And Acharya Prashant suggests that true self-care involves facing those uncomfortable truths about ourselves. Challenging those beliefs and making choices that align with our highest good, even if they're difficult.
So sometimes true self-care looks more like discipline than indulgence.
It can. It's about recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is say no to those things that feel good. But ultimately, they keep us stuck.
Another concept that Acharya Prashant talks about that I find really intriguing is the idea of rebellion. Now, I know that sounds a little strange in the context of spirituality.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of wisdom there.
There is.
Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. And it's important to understand that he's not talking about violence or anarchy. He's talking about inner rebellion. That willingness to question things and to challenge those beliefs and expectations
that might be keeping us stuck,
that no longer serve us.
So it's about having the courage to stand in our truth even when it might go against the grain.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that freedom doesn't come from conforming. It comes from aligning with your own understanding, with your own expression of truth.
So it's about that inner freedom. That willingness to break free from those pressures. And make choices that feel aligned.
Even if they seem unconventional or rebellious.
You know, he uses that analogy of the river flowing down a mountain. You know, it doesn't resist the rocks in its path.
Right. It just flows around them. You know, adapting and changing course as needed.
I think that's such a beautiful metaphor for how we can approach life's challenges.
It is. It reminds us that we don't have to fight
against
life or try to force things. We can flow with it, adapt, and trust that we're being guided.
Acharya Prashant also talks about this difference between living in the personality
Yeah.
and living in the essence.
Right.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
So he's suggesting that the personality is that collection of masks and roles.
Oh, yeah.
You know, identities that we create to navigate the world.
To get approval.
Yeah, to gain acceptance.
Right.
You know, it's that part of us that's concerned with how we look, what people think, whether we're fitting in.
So it's that carefully crafted image that we present to the world, you know, that persona that we hope will protect us from judgment.
Exactly. And while it serves a purpose, it can also become a prison if we get too identified with it. Right. Because then we're constantly seeking validation from others.
And we're afraid to show our true selves.
Right. It's like living behind a mask.
Yeah.
Constantly performing and never being seen for who you really are.
And Acharya Prashant says that beneath the personality,
yes,
you know, beneath those layers of conditioning, there's a deeper essence.
There is.
A true self.
Right.
That's pure and radiant.
And unconditionally loving.
And that's where true liberation resides.
That's where it is.
Connecting with that essence, with that true self, sounds incredibly liberating.
It is.
But how do we actually do that?
It's not about becoming someone different or getting some special quality.
Right.
It's about shedding those layers.
Yeah.
Those masks and roles that have kept us separate from our true nature.
So it's a process of unlearning,
yes,
of letting go of those beliefs and identities that have kept us bound to that cycle.
Exactly.
Of seeking and striving for external validation.
And as we do that, we become more present, more authentic.
Yeah.
And we start to act in ways that are aligned with our truth.
Okay.
And we experience that deeper sense of freedom.
You know, this whole conversation reminds me of something Acharya Prashant said about understanding the actor rather than just the actions.
Right.
Can you break that down for us?
He's basically saying that if we want to understand karma, you know, if we want to break free from those patterns, we need to look beyond the actions themselves.
Right.
And examine the motivations and beliefs that are driving those actions.
So it's about understanding why we're doing what we're doing.
Yes.
Rather than just focusing on what we're doing.
Exactly.
So it's recognizing that our actions are often driven by, you know, these unconscious patterns that we've inherited.
From our families, our cultures, our societies. You know, we might be acting out of habit.
Or we might be trying to please others.
Right.
Or avoid disapproval.
Without realizing that we're not acting from a place of choice or alignment.
And that's why self-awareness is so crucial.
It is.
Because as we become more aware of those, you know, underlying motivations, we can start to make more conscious choices.
Exactly.
So it's about cultivating that inner observer, that part of ourselves that can step back and witness our thoughts, our feelings and actions without judgment.
And then make a choice. That's in our best interest.
Acharya Prashant also talks about this concept of nishkama karma.
Yes.
Which is often translated as desireless action.
Right.
Can you elaborate on what that means?
Sure. It's a powerful concept, but it can be tricky.
Okay.
It's important to understand that desireless action doesn't mean becoming passive.
Yeah.
It's not about renouncing the world, you know, or withdrawing from life. It's about acting without being attached to the outcome.
Okay.
You know, or driven by ego desires.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between effort and surrender.
Yeah.
You know, where we're fully engaged, but we're not clinging to a particular result.
Exactly. And he says this kind of action happens naturally.
Okay.
When we're aligned with our truth.
Yeah.
When we're connected to that purpose. That's bigger than the ego.
So it's not something we have to force.
No.
It's a natural byproduct of that transformation.
Yeah.
That shift in perspective.
Yeah. He uses the analogy of a dancer who's so absorbed in the movement that there's no separation between the dancer and the dance.
Right.
The dancer becomes the dance.
Yeah.
So it's like we're flowing with life rather than resisting it or controlling it.
We're just present.
We're present and allowing things to unfold.
And we act from that place.
And he emphasizes that that is incredibly liberating.
Yes.
Because it frees us from the burden of attachment and, you know, the suffering
that comes with it.
That comes from that attachment.
We're no longer caught in that cycle of craving and aversion, hoping and fearing.
Yeah.
We're just present, allowing life to unfold.
And acting from a place of wisdom and compassion.
Yes.
I think a lot of people might hear this and think, okay, that sounds great.
Yeah.
But how do I actually live that way?
Right.
How do I cultivate that in a world that's constantly pushing me to achieve and acquire and strive for more?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. There's no easy answer.
Right.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
A process of shifting our perspective and aligning our actions.
And it starts with that self-awareness.
Yeah.
Noticing those moments when we're clinging.
Yeah.
When we're feeling that attachment.
And reminding ourselves that happiness is not out there.
So it's a practice, something that we cultivate.
It is.
Through those moments of mindfulness and conscious choice.
Exactly. And it's not about being perfect, never experiencing those things again.
Right.
It's about recognizing those patterns when they show up.
Yeah.
And gently guiding ourselves back.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
And I want to thank you for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
On Acharya Prashant's teachings on karma. It's been a really enlightening conversation.
I agree.
We've only just scratched the surface today.
We have.
And there's so much more to discover. If you're intrigued by what you've heard today, we encourage you to delve deeper into Acharya Prashant's teachings.
You can find a lot online.
Yeah, you can find a wealth of resources online, including videos, articles, and books.
Yes.
And of course, don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more thought-provoking explorations of fascinating topics. We're always diving into new and exciting areas, and we love sharing those insights with you. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.